Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's ERF breakfast briefing on bots, borders, and beyond navigating AI digital change and visa compliance. A very hot topic, or two very hot topics that we're really looking forward to hearing more on. We are delighted to have such experts as Mary Seery Kearney and Dave Kearney, who are going to share their expertise on these really relevant topics at the moment. Um, Firstly, thank you to Contracting Plus, who make these breakfast briefings possible for you to attend with their generous sponsorship. Contracting Plus are key partners for many of our members involved in contract recruitment and sourcing. They offer quick compliance setup for new contractors, provide contract training and information sessions for your teams, and have in-depth insights and research on various sectors within the contracting industry in Ireland. If you're working with contract talent, make sure to give Amy, Jen, or Jimmy a shout. So, before I get into our speakers, I do have a small little bit of housekeeping to go through. So I probably should have introduced myself at the start. I'm Dave Welch. I'm the Director of Commercial Development with Osborne Recruitment, but I'm also the Honorary Secretary on the ERF, and it's my great honour to host this morning's event. But with regards to, we're expecting quite a few questions to come from people there because it is such a hot topic and to have such experts as Dave and Mary present. So can I please ask that all questions are put into the Q&A box? It's just much easier for us to be able to put them to Dave and Mary at the end and for them to be able to answer them. Feel free, as I know a lot of people are doing at the moment, to introduce yourself and network in the chat function. That's great. But please, can we keep all questions into the Q&A box? We are constrained for time. We will have a sharp 10:30 finish. So yeah, we'll try and get through it as quickly as possible. So without any further ado, I am delighted to introduce our speakers this morning. So first, Dave Kearney is the Director of the HR Brief, specialising in HR, industrial relations, health and safety, data protection law, with over 15 years consultancy experience across sectors including construction, manufacturing and recruitment. He holds qualifications in social science, HR, compliance and data law. David is a lecturer in employment law and honorary fellow of the National Recruitment Federation, and he regularly trains professionals in negotiation, conflict resolution and compliance. He's going to take the second part of the presentation on visas, but first off, to set us off with AI in recruitment and transforming threat into triumph, is Mary Seery Kearney, who, and I'm sure as we all know, is a barrister and thought leader in employment, privacy, AI, law and corporate governance. A former senator and legal advisor to numerous organisations, she co-founded the HR Brief, offering consultancy in HR, compliance and data protection. Mary lectures in law and governance, has served on multiple Oireachtas committees and is a passionate advocate for legal reforms in areas like surrogacy and cyber safety. She's also successfully guided the ERF and our predecessor through many legislative changes over the years with some infinite wisdom. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Mary for the first part of this morning's session.
That's super. Thank you very much, David. I appreciate that. So good morning, everyone. I appreciate we're very tight for time, so I'm going to fly in and fly through my section, which is dealing with AI in recruitment and how you can successfully implement AI in recruitment. And I suppose I started reading up on AI when Richard Susskind published his books about the existential crisis for the professions, and he saw the extinction of law and lawyers as they were and as they currently are way back in 2018. Then I started coming across AI as we were rolling out GDPR and as I was advising companies in GDPR. And I suppose so I started tracking documentation, articles, the likes of the Harvard Business Review, and I've done that now for the guts of 10 years in just looking at where are we at? Will AI affect our businesses? And from a recruitment point of view, there is an existential crisis going on here. Are recruitment tools being developed that your clients can do the recruitment without you? You know, there's also the regulatory threat from uncontrolled use of AI. And I suppose the underground or the reality here is that 87% of our staff are already using ChatGPT without any governance and oversight. But this morning, what I'm about what I'm going to try and cram into 20 minutes is to give you the tools to see why we can look at those threats, that existential threat, that regulatory threat, and how we can turn that into a triumph. So, sorry, let's look at, there we go. Okay, so first of all, let's deal with the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room for all of us, for all of your staff, for us as business owners, the elephant in the room is AI going to replace me? And there is, when we look at studies, and when I've looked at different studies drawn up by EY and others across the globe, 73% of people are fearful that AI will replace them, will put them out of a job. 45% of people believe that their jobs are going to be obsolete 5 years from now. In fact, it's 4 years from now since this study came out. But in actual fact, all of government policy, EU policy, all of the supports and the implementation of AI supports, everything is about how the humans in the room and the humans in the loop, as it is known, are are the key to successful implementation of AI. 89% of those who have successfully implemented AI do so because they harness the humans in that loop. They train them up, they look at how they can transform how they do their business to do it more efficiently, and then to have a space for creativity. There is a hidden mode. And hidden reality is that in everybody's offices now, whether you've implemented AI or not, or whether you're just using the tools that are within your CRM system, that 87% of people are reporting using ChatGPT. From once ChatGPT came on board, colleges and places where I was advising and lecturing were saying to me the quality of their assignments, the quality of their engagements had gone up exponentially, way beyond the capacity. It had reached this superhuman level of communication that was obviously AI generated. So the big fear is that your clients have the ability to go on, and when you send them over a document, when you send them over information, they can put that into ChatGPT and they can say, is this document, is this recognizable in ChatGPT? And if it is, in those instances, ChatGPT will say, yes, this was created on such and such a date. So your staff are going to be found out if they are putting documentation or just generating it on the public free ChatGPT. The other element of that is that there is potentially commercially sensitive information going into ChatGPT. There is also a sensitive GDPR information and personal data going into ChatGPT. So if you don't have governance in place, if you don't have compliance and buy-in with your staff, then you have no control. And you are looking at a legal time bomb of coming under GDPR. GDPR governs all of this, as well as the new EU AI Act, as to what how your company can be at a loss as a consequence of this. So looking at, what can AI do in recruitment? There are super courses out there. I've seen many of them, and I know the ERF have been very good in facilitating the learning of AI for recruitment. And AI can eliminate administrative burdens. It can eliminate the need for manual screening and some of the repetitive tasks that your staff do. And the other things that it can do is it gives you an opportunity to amplify relationship building. If I'm not spending my day going through a load of emails, but instead my emails are prioritized and done for me, if I can be given back 2 or 3 hours a week, then that gives me an opportunity to think, what would I do better? Maybe I can pick up the phone to clients better. Maybe I can relationship build better. There is a competitive landscape out there. We have clients who are looking for ethical audits. They are having their suppliers checked for ethical audits. I know myself and Dave sit in with some of the companies of our clients and their clients on their behalf to oversee and support for ethical audits. So you want to be harnessing everything that is possible to increase and improve your productivity and your service to your clients, and being able to anticipate future evolutions. And also you want to be in the AI enhanced recruiter landscape, where you are doing everything to the best of your ability. You're doing it very well. You're doing it in a place of trust, and you want to be part of the recruitment evolution. Okay, so there is a bit of a wake-up call for this year, and let's just bear this in mind. In February of this year, the EU AI Act came into force. That requires that you are running literacy training for all of your staff. You also, from when it comes to recruitment, has been identified as being a high risk area. You are holding a lot of private data. It allows itself to profiling. It allows itself to the abuse of data by AI, and also that unprofessional and free AI tools can be learning from the data that you're putting input and learning from the databases that you have if they are not deployed correctly. You must have a human oversight. You must be able to demonstrate human oversight. And then the directors of your company are directly accountable for AI governance and being able to prove that in the event that the data commission come in and want to do an inspection in the event of there being a complaint. There are other things. I suppose AI, the Data Protection Commission have enhanced powers now. They have they can require you to explain candidate decisions where AI is being used or deployed. People who are not being chosen and not being pulled out of your system for a particular job, but who are registered with you, potentially, if a job is advertised that they have the competencies to apply for, they could say they've been profiled. You've got to be able to prove that you have deployed things fairly and properly. Then also from an employment law point of view, you have duty of care when it comes to AI training. It's very much similar to health and safety. You have a duty of care to know that your staff are safe, your customers are safe, that there is no discrimination going on. And ultimately, this may be tied in the future as greater AI accountability is built. It may be tied in, and there's talk of it being tied in to your license to operate as a recruitment consultant because of the high risks. So I suppose over the last 18 months, as I have become more into this AI implementation space with clients, there is a pattern going on. There are three types of companies out there. There are the ostriches that have their head in the sand. That's 30% of companies. That's what I can see and how I've surveyed and looked at. The problem with that is that your market share will decrease, that your outcome, if you continue to be an ostrich and to say, it doesn't matter, we like the way we're doing things. Yes, the CRM system is more efficient and fancier now. We're using LinkedIn in a better way, and that's all super. But other than that, when it comes to actually how your in-house operations are being done, if you're not looking at AI and not looking at how you can evolve and use digital transformation, then you are running the risk of irrelevance within 24 months. Then there are what I'm euphemistically terming as the cowboys. These are the people who are recklessly adopting, are turning a blind eye to the use of free ChatGPT in their businesses. To the fact is that even if you have a double lock system in the entrance to your CRM and into the use of your tools, even if you have all that, that doesn't stop information being emailed to people's personal addresses, them uploading it on their ChatGPT on their phone, doing work there, and then emailing it back into themselves. So there are things like that that are happening and that I've seen happening. I've also seen the deployment of productivity monitoring tools on staff as I've done GDPR audits where keystrokes are being watched. Now there are apps that can do a workaround of that, from remote working for staff being monitored. Telephone calls are being recorded and being appraised by AI as to the content and the quality of content of staff with their clients and in those conversations. The participation in meetings where you have online meetings that there are tools being deployed monitoring the level at which people engage in these meetings. But the problem of that is that people may engage less or may engage more if they know those tools are there without knowing what's being done and what impact those tools are having for them. Then there's the last group, and this group is about 20% at the moment of companies that are looking at having a strategic pathway for a planned implementation of AI, how it can be done in a way that gets staff buy-in, so that everybody feels psychological safety, that they're not afraid, that if they start talking about their workflows, if they start putting their workflows into a discovery phase of AI deployment, and that it isn't actually to do them out of a job and find themselves being made redundant. That actually, where you have people who buy in to say, I want to be more efficient because actually we're going to change how we do business. So it is important that you're moving that 20%, you're moving into that 20%. We have a real ambition, and I know the ERF have a real ambition to see the recruitment in Ireland move to that place of strategic implementation so that we can be the best in business and we can show market leadership. So we do that. Now, okay, so what is the success formulas? What is the real requirements for a success formula? Well, really, if you have a technology first approach, then companies are paying anything between 20 to 40,000 in deploying AI and in buying in AI. But in that, sorry, just doing a quick time check. But in that, they're finding if you don't have staff buy-in, if there isn't the proper preparation, if you haven't done a cultural assessment of your business and an AI maturity assessment, if you haven't done all of that first, then it is likely that the tools will sit there and not be deployed properly. All that'll end up is that you'll have better emails and maybe a few better content in documents, but actually the way of radicalizing how you do business and automating some of those mundane tasks, that piece won't be genuinely engaged in. For successful implementation, you need to look at the culture first, the readiness, the literacy for AI, having a psychological safety that people are able to engage, they don't feel that they're being done out of their jobs, they don't feel anything like that is happening, and then that you have leadership, the leadership of your business is modeling that and modeling that. Looking for a readiness check, these are 5 questions that I ask as a diagnostic, really, to ask companies. Do your staff understand that ChatGPT or any AI tool might hallucinate? Do they understand what hallucination is and why it might happen, and when can they identify when it is happening? Do they know how to verify AI outputs? Do they know that because hallucination is where the AI is powered to try and give you the answer that it wants. It's there to please. Its impetus to please is it can draw in information and create and fabricate it. The first barrister in Ireland is currently being prosecuted for producing documents before court that were hallucinated by AI. 2 barristers in the UK have been struck off for that and been prosecuted for it. So you have you're seeing it in the legal circle, which are slow enough to prosecute on these areas, and they're cautious. The Irish Bar Council are gone mad on training and making sure that people understand. But what we will now see is professional indemnity will be required. Indemnity will be required by businesses to know if you are running your recruitment process through an AI tool, are you doing so ethically? Are you are you verifying the outputs of that? So is there a culture in your business where those of us who aren't digital natives and had to learn or are learning on our feet, are we able to say, geez, this is wrecking my head, I don't understand this, and have somebody that they can turn around and say it to? Is it safe to admit, I don't know this, I don't know how to do this? And then, so is there that safe for AI confusion within your business? Do you know how to verify outputs? Do you know what about hallucination, how that can happen, why it can happen? So there are 3 questions on your cultural assessment. The next thing is, are you ready? Do you have all of your policies written for AI usage? Can you demonstrate your GDPR compliance in all of the AI workflows? If you answer no to any one of them, then you are in a very high risk situation of having a prosecution or a regulatory breach. If you're putting any data into a free ChatGPT, you're already in a GDPR breach situation. What is the good news? The good news is That's the diagnostic tools. There are many others that I would help and support you with, but those are the essential five. And if you can deal with those, if we can overcome and put you in a place where you can answer yes to those, then you are ready to go. And then within the gap, there is the opportunity. So looking at it, we're about augmentation. Augmentation is where AI works with human beings to make sure those human beings are the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be. So what can AI handle? Within recruitment, AI can handle CV screening, market research and data analysis, looking at, first draft of job descriptions, candidate communications. It can streamline and it can do all of those things. It needs to be the people who are using those tools need to be educated on prompt engineering. They need to be educated on GDPR risks, and they need to be using the correct and proper business and professional level tools. Humans, on the other hand, they excel at relationships, at trust. They excel at creativity. They excel at complex negotiations and problem solving. They excel at strategic career guidance, of being able to anticipate that Mary is at this stage in her career now, but actually she's moved into this job. We placed her at this last year. Give it a couple of years' time, and this is where she can go, and be able to touch base with Mary and see where and have that connection so that you have your future candidates for bigger and better jobs. So they're the important things to look at. I want to give you a very quick illustration that AI has huge limitations that human beings don't. In World War II, if you were flying a fighter bomber, you had a 51% chance of being killed and of not surviving a raid. So they got statisticians together in the UK and in Columbia University to look, and engineers, to say, how do we maximize the chance and make the planes better so that there's a greater chance of survival? So they mapped where all the damage was on to the planes that as they came in, and where the repairs were needed. They mapped that over a period of a month. And this is the illustration they came up with. They came up with all of these red dots. And the inclination of the statisticians and engineers was to say, we reinforce where those red pieces are, those red dots are, because there's a very clear pattern of attack that goes on with that. However, there was a problem with that. And one guy, Abraham Wald in Columbia University, he identified that actually there was a survivor bias going on here. They were only seeing the planes that came back. They weren't seeing the planes that didn't come back. And by not seeing the planes that didn't come back, actually the damage to them was probably where, if we go back, on the white bits on the plane where there are no dots. So what they needed to do was actually reinforce where there were no dots, because that was the likely cause of why the planes didn't come back. It took a human being to identify that. It took a human being to have the creativity. AI can only calculate on the known information. Yes, it can put it together in different ways. It can be creative. It can do imaging. It can do fancy things like that. But actually, it cannot create anything new. Human beings do that. Human beings can see round corners in a way and have the creativity to imagine different things. If you could harness that in your business by automating some of the mundane things that the human beings are doing, then your business has an opportunity to sit back and think and plan and strategize for the years ahead. So what are the advantages? If you go from a compliance first, you make sure that you're GDPR compliant, your EU AI Act compliant. If you do all of that, you're maximizing your trust, your efficiency, you're differentiating yourself from those who aren't following that absolute compliant, and you're putting yourself in a premium position. There are the advantages of I work with companies with a 5-pillar framework for governance, and that looking at what is the compliance and risk, making sure we have put in place the tools for transparency, making sure that there is no bias exposure, looking at data protection. How do you make sure that your information and your commercially sensitive information isn't going into the AI stratosphere, and that there is a continuous monitoring, a continuous oversight. This can happen within a 90-day process. You can move from having a foundation stage that looks at your cultural assessment, that looks at what AI governance is there, what needs to be there, what policy development needs to be there, that you need to look at those, and I'll mention what some of those are sorry, in the next slide, and looking at establishing your legal compliance. You move from that, sorry, you move from that to the strategic deployment, rolling out AI in a controlled way, monitoring performance, improving the engagement of people in that AI, and looking at how your client communication, how your marketing position, how you could remember companies like Netflix began their business by being a company that mailed out DVDs. They then moved to online streaming because they weren't getting the DVDs back, or the prices were bouncing, or the payments were bouncing. So they moved. They looked at the Amazon model, and Amazon the same. And Amazon began by mailing out books. That was their original. But then they found, well, if you lived in an area, if you were in a farming community and you were getting farming related books, well, then maybe you would buy farming overalls. Maybe you'd buy other things. So Amazon pivoted to using the data they had to imagine how their future business could go. Netflix used the data they had of what people's patterns were of getting DVDs and of streaming, who was streaming what. That's why you have individual profiles within your house. Um, by individual streaming individual things, then that educated them as to what type of their own production they would put in. So if you use the patterns of your business, the patterns of your client wants, the patterns of your candidates, those patterns, if you looked at that, what could you pivot to being new and exciting and being that game changer in your business and in your area? And then the last phase is looking at capacity building. Sorry, that was the wrong way around, but you know what I mean. So what kind of questions come up? How do teams resist change? The answer to that is yes. People who don't feel part of the evolution, who don't feel consulted, who don't feel reassured, who their cultural readiness isn't thought about, those people will be resistant. They may not overtly sabotage, but they'll sabotage your AI implementation by not working with it. You know, the tools for AI readiness, AI implementation, they are tools that can be applied to regardless of the AI tool in the future, regardless of how the technology changes. They are the same simple pattern and the same governance, oversight, and staff onboarding, staff consultation, and that becomes talent attraction, talent retention, bringing in, incorporating the digital natives of Gen Z with your members of staff who have learned on their feet, and in so doing also AI by taking and automating processes that allows you to maximize the human touch in looking at a compliance checklist. What to have. You must have data processing documentation. You have to have AI risk assessment. You have to have the framework that goes in that. And I do a full, I suppose, a list of all of the policies and the oversight that you need for those. Look at what is your risk assessment. Have you bias detection? Have you mitigated for that bias detection? What are are there humans in the review? Are there humans overseeing it? Are you conducting GDPR audits to make sure that everybody is GDPR compliant? And then in your candidate communications, are you communicating to your candidates about when AI is being used, when it's likely to be used? Are they clear? Are they giving their explicit consent? Are they doing that? It's really important that you're implementing those. So you need to have, for this to be a great success, you need to have a culture first, looking at the culture of your business, managing the change management that arises around AI implementation. It is the culture first and the technology settlement second. That is the people first. They are your greatest asset. And then the AI and the technology for it. So you're doing a mindset shift. You're bringing people on board. There are tools and strategies and games and competitions and all sorts of things that happen within businesses, and I work with businesses to put in place to make sure that that everybody is showing off when they're using AI. But also then we get to see, well, where is it maybe not as GDPR compliant as we'd like it to be? So we can ensure that there is a guided practice going on there, and that we are seeing, watching how the practice of AI is going on, looking at skills development, because people will get excited about this, they'll want to be part of it, and then measuring its implementation. So what you need to have your governance components are an AI use policy, output verification protocol, making sure that is verified, that you're not putting out hallucinations to your clients and to your candidates, that you're dealing with candidate handling in a GDPR and EU Act manner, and have an incident response plan. You must have an incident response plan. I want you to imagine, if we look at 12 months from now, when we sit when we sat the ERF conference, we talked about, imagine a year from now, what could this look like a year from now? So in a year from now, you could have a situation where 80% of your admin of the tedious admin things can be automated. You can look at the transparency of your embrace of AI being a selling point, that you are ethical, that you are safe, that you are trustworthy, that your candidates can believe in you, and that your clients can have trust in you. They're not going to get caught out in an ethical audit of any sort. You can look at a growth then, because your staff have the opportunity to build relationships, to grow that trust and that relational piece that only human beings can do. I don't know if any of you are getting the Indeed telephone calls saying, add me to your WhatsApp. I have a thing, but they're prolific. That's non-human. That's a turnoff. That is, whether it's real or a scam, whichever it is, doesn't matter. The fact is that it is not human beings with the instinct and the unique faculties that human beings bring. And then also you're future proofing your business and making sure that you are resilient in the face of AI and the evolution in the recruitment industry. You're showing the value added of your business to your client companies. What is the difference in you being there supplying staff to them, as opposed to the staff being supplied are them using an AI tool within their own business? What is the difference? The difference is candidate management, candidate growth, candidate maturity, candidate support, and bringing the right people into the process. And so then we sort of come in, what is the next step? This is obviously a service size. This is my pitch, in that this is a service that I support, that I brought through. It's a lot like GDPR. It's a bespoke piece that goes into your business in confidence, that I can do to support you along the way. And I suppose in doing that, the existential threat that we have, the regulatory threats that are there at the moment, and that I am fairly confident pretty much every business has been exposed to, those threats are eliminated when you have proper AI implementation and proper AI deployment. At that, I will stop sharing, hand over back to you, David.
Fantastic. That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Mary. That was
I'm going to hand it over to Dave. He's going to come
yeah,
in.
just we have just one quick question before you go, if that's okay. I know we are tight for time, and there was some great questions in there, but one question I thought kind of might echo a lot of what a lot of our visitors are looking at. This person often uses the free ChatGPT to update candidate CVs and make uniform format to send out to their clients. Are they safe to do this if they remove their contact info, or is that classed as a GDPR breach?
It is a GDPR breach, because personal data is not just my name and my telephone number. Anything, if I have a unique career history. if that, you know, it wouldn't take an awful lot for anyone to identify me when you put in what jobs I've had and where I've been. It'd be pretty obvious for who I am. So yes, it is a GDPR breach.
Super. That's perfect.
All
Thank you
right.
so much. For
Well,
those people who have any other questions, we will be sharing Mary's contact details at the end. And as her last slide showed, she does offer this service to organizations as well. So thank you so much. Going to hand over now to David Kearney, who's going to talk us through the not not straightforward aspect around navigating the immigration system in Ireland. So again, I'm going to just hand over to David straight away as we are tight on time. So again, I imagine there'll be a lot of questions on this one at the end. We'll get to as many as we can, but please feel free to add them into the answer into the question box, and then if there's time, Dave will address as many as he possibly can. Alternatively, we will have Dave's contact details at the end, so feel free to contact him with any of your questions. So Dave, are you okay there? Are we good to go?
Yeah, thanks very much,
Perfect.
David. Thank you. I only hope that Mary doesn't replace me with AI. That's my big fear, to be honest. Good morning, everybody. I just want to put context in this talent pool that you guys fish in terms of international talent in particular. So if you take the population of Ireland, there's roughly 5.5 million now, would you believe? And of that 5 million, about 2,700,000, just under 800,000 people are employed. 73% of that 2.8 million are Irish-born people, Irish nationals who hold those jobs, which is fantastic. And then 27% make up what is referred to as the non-Irish national workforce. Of that grouping, believe it or not, Polish are the highest grouping, followed by the UK and by India. And then you have about 50% made up of all the remaining EU countries. And then from 130 countries makes up the rest. It's quite a staggering figure. A very interesting trend of late is in the past 12 months, over 10,000 Americans, USA citizens, have come to Ireland, have applied for visas to live here. And of that 10,000, over 2,000 have been granted critical work visas. So a very, very interesting trend, possibly a new market that's been untapped, something for you guys to consider and look at. That's kind of what we want to get through this morning. I want to just maybe talk quickly about where the permits are going. So as you can see, there was just under 40,000 permits issued last year. And of that 40,000 permits, the majority went to India. So it's well on track. The first 6 months of this year, those permits are well on track to exceed 40,000. I know there's been a lot of negative publicity, particularly around the Indian community, but that is not impacting in terms of applications for people to come, and hopefully that that whole issue will pass. Remember, we've had a very unique relationship with India in particular for about 300 years. Our former president De Valera helped to write the Indian constitution, and in fact their flag, as you know, is based on the tricolour flag, and indeed their whole revolution was based on our revolution in 1916. So a lot of synergy, over 100,000 Indians living and working in Ireland, huge population. Next to that is the Brazilian community. So you have India is the top grouping in terms of the visas that have been granted. And then you have, after that, we'll go down through them very quickly if you want. So 5,192 to India. Then you have Brazil, 1,867. Then you have the likes of, but you even have places from Malawi, Malaysia, 305, you Pakistan, 1,800, you have 1,900 from the Philippines. So you can see the areas where these visas are being granted. India, by far the highest, and as you know, that is predominantly in the healthcare sector. So if we just move on very quickly then to the distribution by sector, and this is kind of important. If you look at the trends, you can see obviously healthcare and social, and that would be social work and so on, that's increasing. It's a very significant trend that's increased since 2020. You can see the market there around IT pretty much collapsed at one point there around between 21 and 22, is again starting to grow steadily, which is great. And there is a large number of growth areas in all sectors, to be fair. The one that surprises me probably the most is construction. Construction, as you can see, from 2020 up to 2024 and again into 25 has a steady kind of rise, but nothing in the context that you would expect given the amount of vacancies that exist and demand that exists in the construction sector. So construction alone, there was manufacturing. So agricultural, forestry and fisheries had over 3,000 visas. You had construction had 1,500. I mean, 1,500 it just strikes me as particularly low, something you guys may be much more familiar with. But I fully respect your knowledge on that. Other service activities, 1,700. Financial and insurance activities, 2,000. And then accommodation is 3,358. Now, a lot of Ukrainians, when they came here, would have filled typically a lot of the roles within the hospitality sector. But that's kind of where all the growth areas are, which is great. We can move. Okay. So just so we get the language right, guys, an employment permit is not a visa. A visa is not an employment permit. They're two different animals in the sense that they are two different government departments. So one is an employment permit. So that's a right to work. The visa is a right to enter Ireland and to live here. So they're two different departments. One is the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, and the other obviously is the Department of Justice. And that's why there's two differing times for processing. That's why you must not offer a contract at least 12 weeks out from the commencement date. That's the reason for that, is to allow sufficient time. Now, I know there's particular difficulties, particularly around the critical skills. There seems to be quite a backlog from South Africa at the moment. That's a processing issue with the consulate and the embassy. But again, just to say, really important is that the permit is not a visa. And when you use the language visa, there is a room for confusion because the truth of it is the permit does not guarantee you entry into the country. When you arrive at the port of Dublin, whether it's the airport or whatever entry point, you will be met by an immigration officer who will determine your status to enter the country. You may have a work permit, and that's great, but the immigration officer, and over 2,000 people a year are refused and sent back home because they didn't have their travel documents, they didn't have their health insurance, they didn't have their travel insurance. There's a whole lot of stuff they didn't, their qualifications didn't match. So the fact that they get the work permit, and that's why you must get the work permit first before you make the application for the visa. And that's why it has to be done in that order. The common categories of permission, and there's probably about 7 or 8 different visas, but in truth, the ones that recruitment come across most are the critical skills, which is referred to as the golden visa. It's a fantastic visa to get. The general employment visa is the next highest one. The typical is where when people, workers from the UK, North of Ireland, come down for 90 days or less. No real issue. The big challenge there is obviously with the taxation, this double taxation that can happen between the UK revenue authorities and the Irish revenue authorities. And that's a complex issue that after the 90 days, there's no issue. They don't need visas or permits or right to stay or anything like that. But where this becomes a challenge and a difficulty for recruitment is particularly around the area of taxation. So that's something that needs to be looked at. Labour market access, there's about 35,000 people in the system now that are qualified to work in Ireland. They can work. They have their labour market access letter. It's not something that seems to be favoured a lot by recruitment companies, and we'll go into that a little bit more as we move on. Students and graduates. So just before we move, just be clear on the stamp 2, for example. Stamp 2 is not a work permit. So our Brazilian friends, there's over 70,000 now living in Ireland. Many of them have come in here through the educational system, as you know, that is not a work permit. It is an educational permit with a visa, with a right to work for 20 hours in out of term and 40 hours, and they are maximum hours that they're allowed to work. So they're only allowed to work 20 hours um, in term and 20 hours out of, and that is specifically set out in terms of the year that they can do, but they cannot do 45 hours, 46 hours. They can't do overtime. They can only work a maximum of 20 or 40 hours. Really important, because it's not a work permit. It is an educational permit with a right to work on a casual basis to supplement their costs of coming to learn and study here. If we go on to the critical skills is a great piece. I need to be absolutely clear here. Critical skills is about a government policy. It's actually a deliberate policy of the Irish government to attract highly educated and skilled workforce to live here, and to live here indefinitely. That's kind, and you can see why it's so generous in terms of the benefits that accrue around the critical skills. Critical skills is on the basis of 38 to 64,000. There is a critical skills list. It's quite extensive. It's important that you look at it and familiarize yourself with it. And it is, remember, they can bring their spouse and their dependents immediately. They can also work, no restrictions on them working, which is fantastic. They can also bring their dependents. And after 21 months, they can seek to get a stamp 4, which again is the golden ticket in terms of capacity to work. Now, a lot of people have asked me questions about the 9 months. So on this visa, they must stay with the employer for at least 9 months. They can move after 9 months, but they must supply the department with a new contract of employment, and they must notify the department that they're changing employment. There's no issue with that whatsoever. Watch the contract offer on this, guys. Remember, they can do that up to 3 times within the 2 years. So they can change jobs within 3 times, but in each time they must advise the department of the change, and they must supply the contract. The contract must be for a minimum of 2 years. But I know from speaking to a number of the critical skills applicants, they have said to me, look, well, it doesn't kind of send a very strong message. It only says 2 years. We'd rather have a contract of indefinite duration. There's nothing to prevent you saying a contract of indefinite duration, which I think would reinforce that message that you want somebody to stay. You're trying to attract the skill in, and it's something to consider. Another thing to consider is you can vary the start date, providing you put that caveat in the contract. So you can say Dave Kearney is due to start within 12 weeks on this date. This may change subject to the issue of a work permit and a visa. So in other words, you can alter the contract. Can you terminate the contract within the first couple of months? Well, the answer is yes. And there's a provision for that within the Act. So if somebody doesn't have the required skills that they say they do, if someone is in breach of the disciplinary code of the company, or if somebody is made redundant, then there is a provision for that contract to be ended lawfully by the client company. Important to remember that and to advise them on that basis. They're given roughly about 6 months to find alternative employment. Again, they must notify the department, and the client must notify the department of any change in circumstances. So even if the permit's been granted to the individual, the client still must advise the department, and that's really very, very important. There is a residency permit, but that's automatically granted. Watch this one about health insurance. It's one where a lot of people are getting caught out. So how they overcome this in the first 12 months is they buy travel insurance. So at the point of entry, the immigration officer may ask to see their travel insurance document or their health insurance. Remember, they are not entitled to state benefits. So for the first 2 year, 21 months, up to the point that they apply for the stamp 4, their dependents, their spouses, and themselves are not entitled to state benefits. They of course will be taken in an emergency, but they'll get a bill, and that's the bottom line. They are not covered by the state in terms of any of those benefits. So be aware of that. And again, the client company probably, as an enticement, should be offering public health insurance, a VHI or whatever, but certainly the travel insurance, if it's comprehensive, will cover them for the first 12 months, will get you over that initial hurdle. Okay. We move on quickly then to the general employment visa. Now, this is much more extensive again, but watch this one very carefully because this changes. The government will allow, for example, 500 truck drivers or 500 bus drivers to be given permits for this year. But it's a bit like Home Store or More. When they're gone, they're gone. So you've got to watch the website to see what are the current status in terms of the permits that are available, and the quantities that may be limited to. And again, that can change and that can vary. The offer again has to be a minimum of a 2-year contract. Again, same thing, they can change, and yes, they can be dismissed. It is a 34,000 cutoff point. That can be as low as 30,000 for certain categories. That's carers and so on, people in the agricultural sector, horticultural sector, providing in the carer section that they have the qualifications. They can bring their spouse and partner, but that is after 2 years. Okay. Sorry, it's after 1 year of employment, so it's not 2 years. Remember, the critical skills is immediate. It's 1 year limitation of the general skills. They can only apply for stamp for eligibility after 5 years. And you've got to do this dreaded market test. The labour market test must be done prior to applying for the permit, the work permit. It can't be done at the same time because you've got to show evidence. Anna, can we move on to that next one? So critical skills do not need a labour markets test. Very important to say that. Okay. But you do need it in terms of a general employment visa, and that has to be advertised on the government website. You can see it there, and that goes across Europe. And the whole need for that is to make sure that the local labour market, European labour market, has been exhausted before you make that application. It has to be up for 28 days, and you have to do this correspondingly with another advertisement in terms of a local paper or online or whatever to advertise the job. You then make the application for the permit, and then they make the application for the visa. Okay. Okay, labour market access. We'll just move quickly on to that one. That is about 38,000 at the moment applicants sitting in IPAS centres available for work. I think the recruitment industry are a bit reluctant to engage here because you're worried about reference checks, you're worried about Garda vetting, you're worried about all those things that typically you would be able to do and stand over with your clients. The difficulty with that is that it isn't always possible. Documentation isn't available, checks aren't available. But you must remember you can only get this market labour access after 5 months in the system. So in other words, the Gardaí have done their background checks, Interpol have done their searches, the federal states in America have done their searches on criminality and so on. So anybody who's presenting with this letter has already gone through 5 months pretty much of screening and checking and double checking in terms of their I suppose, the reliability in terms of putting them into the marketplace. The downside to this letter is you must notify the department in 20. So if you have somebody on a temporary basis who's been placed on a temporary basis and then they're sent to another placement, you must notify the department every time of where they've changed employment so the department can track where they are in relation to their employment. Once that letter expires and the blue card, what's referred to the blue card, which is their temporary residency card, they cannot be employed unless that he can prove they've engaged with a renewal before the renewal date expired. So once the renewal date expired, it's a difficulty. Remember, never dismiss anybody who is in breach of a visa timeline. You always suspend them until such time as they can prove to you that they're in date and everything is working well. I'm just conscious of time, guys, so I know I'm speeding up here a little bit. That's the eligibility. It's available on the website. You can double check it with the department's own queries if you have any doubts or any concerns about the letter. I know it's not the standard type of thing. I know it's what you're not used to, guys, but it is a big pool of workforce there available to you, ready to go, probably low entry jobs. And to be fair, for anyone who's used them and has worked particularly well. There are the employment restrictions. Again, it's all there for you to see on the slides. And that's your responsibilities. I really apologize for kind of charging through it now. I just want to talk about compliance very quickly, if I can. The penalties for non-compliance are quite severe. I won't lie to you. There was a kind of a light touch approach to compliance for many, many years in Ireland around visas and work permits and all these type of things. If you think during COVID, we probably would have all starved to death only for the Brazilians and the Deliveroo drivers and the Uber drivers and the divil and all. And the truth of it is, many of them do 20 hours and do 40 hours, but then we know many of them work as Uber drivers or Deliveroo or whatever. And strictly speaking, they're not allowed to. So there was a light touch for a long time. That has changed. That has very, very much changed now. There is no discretion anymore. If your business agency is inspected and you are found to be in breach of the Permits Act, you will be prosecuted. And it is a criminal prosecution to knowingly engage and employ people who do not have a current permit and work visa. So it's really crucial, guys, and I would urge you now to check your CRM systems to make sure you have a robust system that's going to flag when people's visas are coming up for renewal. Don't wait till the week before because it takes too long for these visas. And if anyone is out of date, you have got to suspend them until such time as they can prove to you they're compliant. If you are inspected, you will be automatically prosecuted in the district court, and that is a prosecution that will affect the business, the license, and the directors of the company. So without frightening the bejesus out of you all, I'm really appealing to you now to take this on board and to address it seriously. And I'll just move to the next one. This is really about, you've got to check the eligibility check. There is, your client might come on to you and absolutely say with a hand on heart that their business is crucial and the skills they need is a crucial skill. It doesn't mean it's a critical skill in terms of the process or the application process, or indeed that level that has to be achieved. So check the eligibility checks. That's the key one to say, look, there's not a chance. It's not on the list. You're not going to get it. The system is kind of user friendly. The government have a new portal that they've designed. That's it there. It's really looks great. There was a couple of teething problems initially. Works really, really well. And I would encourage you to log on, just have a look at it, familiarize yourself with it. Very user friendly. And okay, we're coming up to 10:29. I'm just aware of the time, guys. I'm really sorry. Candidates from Ireland, I suppose you're looking at those who get the stamp 1, who are changing to stamp 4. You're looking to the 1G, which is the spouse and dependents. Really great visa. That's why it's called the golden visa. Again, the employment one is the key. Watch the Brazilian one. Again, as I said, this type 2 stamp is not a work permit. It is a right to come and be educated and to work, but just watch it. It's the one where people are getting caught out most by inspectors. So just watch it, guys. And then probably the fourth one then is the most underutilized one, which is the access to the labour market letter, which I said you guys seem a little bit anxious about, but I need to reassure you it's really good. And again, you can check if you have any doubts that it's dodgy in any way whatsoever. I don't know how we're doing for time, David. We're kind of pretty tight at this stage, so I'm going to wrap up. Take any questions.
I think we're done. Yeah, we have a sharp 10:30 finish there. So what we will do, however, because there was some great questions, though you did cover an awful lot, Dave. Thank you so much for that. What we will do is we will share on Dave's contact details as well as Mary's contact details. If you have any specific questions that you'd like to cover yourself, or address any situations, I know that would be there. So before we finish up, I want to say a quick thanks again to the team at Contracting Plus. If you're working with professional contractors, make sure you're chatting to the team about how they can support you and have them on your partner list for umbrella umbrella and limited companies. Please keep an eye out for the rest of the events. We'll have another 2 or 3 at least before the end of the year. And as always, the ERF, we're always interested in getting topics that's of relevance to yourselves, none more so than AI and visas. So major thank you so much to David and Mary, and really, really appreciate you sharing your insight. And we look forward to seeing everybody else at the next event. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.